The Samsung S95D is a very bright, beautiful TV. It can produce colors at high brightness levels better than just about any TV available today. But there is one, dare I say, glaring weakness to this TV. Or maybe it's a strength. We'll really have to talk about this in depth. Starting off by addressing the selling point of this TV for Samsung. The S95D really has some interesting characteristics to it, to say the least. And the main characteristic is what Samsung is calling glare-free technology. And what this is a coating that is designed to eliminate reflections that you can have in your viewing environment due to sunlight or direct light. Now, it doesn't always seem to work as intended, in my opinion. There are some downsides that we will address, but there are going to be certain situations where I think this is an excellent solution for certain room types. I have seen many different people judge this TV in so many different ways, and some seemed fair, and I thought that some also seemed unfair. But in their defense, I do not think it was intended to be unfair. It's just a really hard comparison to test fairly. Even I struggled doing so myself, so take any test that I'm doing in this video with a grain of salt. So yeah, the first impression you might have with this TV might be affected because you're seeing it at its worst or you're seeing it at its best, depending on a number of different factors. And what I mean by that is that you could put this thing through stress test after stress test, and you could see results that do not look ideal, or you could see results that look positive. And really, it's going to depend on how you test this TV. Before I give my final thoughts on the coating, I do want to make sure you guys see some of the tests that I performed, and the first one was the S95D versus the G4 in a darker scene on a sunny day. You can see the G4 reflection from the blinds and my carpet, as well as the shadows of the blinds on my carpet on the G4 screen. But on the S95D, you don't see that. Instead, you see the incoming light diffused in a circular glow. Let's call this example 1. Which do you prefer? Tell me in the comments after the video. Another example here is the blinds open, this time with some brighter content. And this is going to have an impact on the S95D that is less noticeable than it was before. And the reflection on the G4, it is still there, but there are some that can actually live with a reflection like this, depending on who you are. And that's kind of what it really comes down to. These things are going to be which looks worse to you in a situation that is going to fit your environment. Now, the next test was done with a dark scene on just the S95D. I had some lamps behind my viewing position. That's the two glowing spots that you see on the screen. This is detailing what I think could be a core problem for people if you have a similar setup such as this, with lights in your environment that you can't quite take care of. Now, obviously, the best situation would be to light control your room with any TV setup, but I realize that's not realistic for a lot of people. Now, based off of those examples, it's clear to me that there's going to be rooms that benefit from this, such as sun-soaked rooms that have issues with sun filling the room causing large reflections. The S95D will be very good at that. However, if you're in a medium lit room with ambient lighting or lights directly behind your viewing position, then you might want to keep that in mind because that might not be the greatest situation for you. And you might find that more distracting on the S95D than you would with a traditional coating. So it's a pick your poison type situation that you're running into if you are in a challenging room. However, whichever is least distracting to you in that environment, that is going to be the one you want to grab. So hopefully that somewhat helps you out, but ultimately I think that being able to pick the one that's going to benefit you the most might have to do with you buying the TV and trying it yourself. And if you don't like the TV, you can swap it out for another TV in the same tier with a traditional coating that's not like the S95D. Okay, so enough about the coating. Let's move on to what you guys really want to hear about, the picture quality, because it is a colorful TV to say the least. But first, let me be clear, this TV was purchased for review. This is not a sponsored video, but if you would like to support the channel, please consider making your next purchase on one of my affiliate links in the description below. Thank you so much for your support. Okay, so now we have to talk about picture quality. And of course, the beauty of this TV is going to be the fact that it is a quantum dot OLED. QD-OLED is going to be better than a traditional WOLED in the category of color brightness. You will not see a WOLED be able to match the color brightness of a QD-OLED. So you can get higher color brightness and you can get higher brightness in general from a QD-OLED over a WOLED. But that said, MLA is going to improve a traditional WOLED. For example, the G series TVs from LG, the LG G4, is actually going to look a little bit brighter than the S95D in certain scenes, just due to the way that they do their tone mapping. So the G4 will actually have higher perceived brightness, in my opinion, than the S95D, but what it can't do is match the higher color brightness, and that's going to be the biggest thing with the S95D. Now again, I really do love the color on this TV, and just looking at it compared to the other TVs that I have set up, nothing screams oversaturated and nothing looks undersaturated. It just has a really good color purity, and like I mentioned before, it holds on to color very nicely at higher brightness levels. And if you are somebody who likes to push it into the home cinema modes or even vivid mode, you will appreciate the color there as well. And if you want to push it even further, there is a new color boosting setting which will overemphasize colors even more. Of course, this will be based on your preferences more than anything else. Now overall, this does seem to be the brightest QD-OLED that Samsung has produced so far. And it really does show in a lot of scenes. The brightness does tend to trade blows with the G4, though I'd argue the G4 does edge it out because of the depth with the new special tone mapping tactics that they use. That said, this TV on its own does look amazing. And one more thing about the coating, since it does relate to picture quality, a lot of people ask me, does it have an effect on the sharpness overall in a dark room? And I would say that there is no real detriment or impact on that aspect, as I did have it next to the S90D and I couldn't really tell them apart. I couldn't tell which one had the coating and which one didn't. The S95D is obviously brighter, but the overall effect is not going to be worsened on the S95D. Everything still does look shiny and glossy in a dark room. So you're not losing the luster of objects when you're watching on TV. So in a dark room, I didn't have any complaints at all with this TV. Compared to the S90D, I didn't see a difference with that in mind. Those of you wondering, has Samsung improved the OS? And yes, they have improved the OS. It's quite a bit better than last year. I would say that it's much snappier and way easier to control overall. I had a pleasant experience with Tizen OS, and I said this in all of my 2024 Samsung reviews. I really do like the changes made here. So one thing about the S95D that you'll have to know, it's not like your traditional TV with all of your ports on the back of the TV. No, instead, these are all going to be on the back of something called a One Connect box, which is a separate external box that you do plug directly into the TV. So it is one wire that goes from the TV to the box itself. This could be a benefit if you do have trouble getting to the back of your TV. It's much easier to plug it in the back of a box, but it's also something that I could see just getting in the way for people. It really depends on how you have your TV set up and if this is going to be ideal for you. Okay, so now let's talk about game mode. Game mode on this TV is fantastic. I think that having Game Motion Plus again is one of Samsung's secret weapons. Motion interpolation in gaming is a nice thing to have, as many games are still in 30 frames per second for whatever reason, but in those situations it really does help. And HDR gaming on this TV is fantastic as well. There's really not much banding in colors leading to posterization, so I thought that was a really good sign when it comes down to HDR gaming. I don't see that with all TVs, so that's a nice plus to have. SDR gaming is bright and the peak brightness is not locked out in that mode as well, which again, that is not the case for all TV brands. But I will say this, I did enjoy gaming on this TV a lot, and I will have a full gaming review going even further in depth about gaming in the near future. Now, on the topic of gaming, a lot of people are asking about dropouts. Did I have any dropouts with the S95D? From my testing so far, and even testing it on a PC, I didn't have any dropouts whatsoever. So if there was dropouts this year, I haven't experienced them yet. You guys can let us know in the comments if you have this TV and you're experiencing dropouts. Please let us know so we can be aware of it. But so far, so good on the dropout thing. Now, really quickly on the topic of sound, I think the sound overall is pretty good with the dialogue. However, I do think it lacks bass at times, and I was wishing that it had the same kind of bass as my S95B. But like I mentioned, the clarity on this TV is very pleasant, and it is better than most TVs. And if you play around with the TV equalizer a little bit, you can get better low end out of this TV, although you may sacrifice some clarity with things if you go that route. Now, when it's all said and done, it's clear to me that this is a polarizing TV. The S95D is a TV that you're gonna love or you're gonna hate it. And I don't think there's going to be an in-between for a lot of people. I will say this though, for a bright room, that is a place that I can't recommend a lot of TVs. This TV, however, will be recommended in a bright room for a lot of situations, but it is going to depend on your situation. Again, there is going to be situations where a sun-soaked room, for example, I love recommending this TV. But if you have a lot of ambient lights directly in the back of your viewing position, well, then I think that might be a less fortunate situation for you. So my recommendation, if you're really in on this TV, buy it, try it out, and see if it's going to fit your situation. The worst thing that can happen is you exchange it for a different TV that has a different coating. But if you like it and it'll fit, you'll be really happy with the TV because when the coating is working, it looks very nice. And I actually had a very pleasant experience with it when sun was coming into the room. But hey, I would love to hear your guys' opinion on the S95D. Tell me in the comments, do you like this coating or is the coating a deal killer? I know there's going to be a ton of back and forth about this topic, so all I ask is you just keep it civil. And if you guys want to see the main competition for the S95D, I have a review of the G4 and I also have the S95D against the G4. So you're going to want to check that out before you make a purchase. And if you guys enjoyed this content, hit the like button and consider subscribing for future reviews, settings, and comparisons. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I hope to see you in the next one.